Hello and welcome to another one of Innovation Visual's Digital Marketing Answered. I'm very happy to be joined here today by Alex King of Figures HR. Alex,
Hey,
good
Tim.
to see you.
Nice to see you. You well?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. Thanks for coming in today and spending some time with us and giving some value, hopefully, to the audience about revenue generation, revenue growth.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Great. So today we want to talk about how to build an effective revenue growth team and model. But I think before we dig into that, I think the audience needs to know a little bit more about Alex King.
Sure. Well, where to start, right? So I started my career in media sales, and I did that for a couple of years, and I ended up speaking with the auditors that came in, and that led me down a path of working for an accounting firm, which wasn't what I expected in any sort of way. And I worked there for I don't know, 4 or 5 years and helped them build that business. So I was really lucky to report to 2 amazing guys who were basically my mentors. And they really took me under their wing. And over the years, they built the business up. We ended up selling the business to a larger firm, like you do in that space. And with the money that the guys had made from that, they actually invested in an idea I had, which led me to run my own business for 7 years, which is where we met. Right?
Indeed, yes.
So many moons ago.
Yeah.
And ran that for like 7-8 years, which was a great experience.
Very successfully, I might add, as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a great adventure, right? And you learn so much, and especially at the age, it was just an amazing opportunity, and I was surrounded by some amazing people. And I got to the point where I realized it was my time to move on and do something else. So I ended up going to work for a product we were selling when I had my business, which was one of the first like accounting products in the cloud. So that was like my first foray into SaaS and tech sales. And really from then on, it's been working with seed or Series B businesses and helping them scale and go to the next level. And very often that's been a blend of both marketing and also sales. So I think one of the things, like, because I ran my own business, you couldn't just be a sales guy. You couldn't just run marketing, right? You had to do the whole thing. Yeah. So even now, while I might run sales, I always view it with a much more holistic revenue focus.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because that's a really good background that you've given. And I think because you've seen things from different sides, it gives you the power to be able to make better decisions and look at the team and the implications of what you're doing within a team. Yeah,
like definitely, right? I think, if you went back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, marketing has just changed radically, like absolutely radically. Like, the mix you had at hand was like maybe some display advertising for B2B, right? Like it was advertising in the trade journal. You had your exhibitions, direct mail and email blasts is what it was called back then, or e-marketing, right?
Yeah.
And I think like now for a lot, especially in SaaS, right? A lot of marketing functions now are like really tied to a number. And that means that's matured, and that means that they've come further into the sales cycle.
Yeah.
So like, whereas marketing might have just been lead gen maybe 10 years ago, or not even lead gen, it was just about brand and doing brochures.
Yeah.
Now it's about really trying to generate revenue and being aligned to the number that the sales leader is also going towards. So I feel like that's helped me extremely well in my journey, because I don't view it just as sales, I view it as a holistic process, and understanding that, you might be having a load of leads, but if they're not converting into pipeline, it's just wasted energy, right?
Yeah.
So I try to view things holistically for sure, and that's definitely a benefit of my background.
So when you talk about something like RevOps, like what do you see that encompassing? So when you're helping these companies develop growth in revenue, what do you see as within that remit?
Yeah, I think RevOps, right, it's a really new term. I think like really it's only become prominent in the last, 3-4 years probably?
Yeah.
Like before that, it didn't exist, right? And I think if you think about the evolution of RevOps, you had like sales admin, and then like maybe sales operations, and now it's revenue operations. And each of the different disciplines in revenue, like CS, marketing, all have their own their own ops.
Yeah.
But I think the value of RevOps is like just extreme. Like if you get it right within the business now, it's your secret sauce, right? It allows you to pull To put it into context, right? If you think about the traditional sales process for a lot of SaaS businesses,
Yeah.
you've got marketing, you've got an SDR function, so guys doing sales development.
Yeah.
You got the salesperson, you might have CS, customer success, and account managers.
Yeah.
They've all got their own data in silos. So until you pull all that data together
Yeah.
and you align it, you're not making decisions, which are informed and considered across the whole process.
Yeah.
And really, until you start thinking about how you can make the tweaks here, like small incremental gains at the top, have profound impacts at the bottom, right? So I think it's like huge to bring in RevOps. And, I always encourage whenever I'm working for a company to bring in RevOps as soon as we can, because the automation, the data insights, all of that is it's a game changer for a lot of businesses.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of parts in that mix, which are going to help bring things together.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of then the change of emphasis, then you've talked about things like customer success and account management and things. Parking those to one side for a moment. With your work with a lot of like early stage seed and Series A and B funded businesses, marketing and that early traction, that lead gen is really important. So how do you see marketing and sales, in terms of growth, how do you see those working together?
I think the problem is they don't often work together. Right? That's the first thing, right? Like, and I think, peeling it back, what the problem is that neither really care or want to know, or that's not always true, right? But very often they're on very different sides of the office, and neither leader really understands the other person's world. Okay. And that's maybe a fallacy of the CEO not trying to get alignment, right? And I think nowadays marketing holds a number, right? They have a number on whatever the number is for the business. They might have 10, 20%, or they might have 60, 70, 80% of pipeline. And that is driving closer alignment because, they're never going to achieve their goals if they don't work closer with sales, and sales will never achieve their number unless they work closer with marketing, right?
So just to dig into that a bit more, because I know some of our audience are certainly more marketing focused than sales focused and vice versa. When you're talking about this number and this percentage and this the forcing of the alignment, you're talking about the responsibility for a percentage of revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think it depends on the maturity, right? Like it would probably be a shock to the system to bring in an immediate revenue number for a marketing leader that's never had that before. That should be the end goal, but it might be an evolution of moving from just being lead gen to pipeline and then to revenue, right? So I think there's definitely a maturity that you have to go through to do it properly. Otherwise, you're going to rush into it without any short-term results, right? Or it's too much of a jump. Yeah. I think the other thing is, like, once you've aligned around what people need to do, it's like how they're going to do it, right? So like service level agreements where you say marketing is obligated to deliver this, but if they deliver this, like if they deliver X marketing qualified leads, sales have to do this, right? So they have to follow up within X time and they have to do it so many touch points, right? They might run it through a sequence or a cadence. And then at the end, they have to give feedback through an open text box before they remove it from that cadence or sequence. Right. So you got that feedback loop. And I think until you have what people call like a service level agreement, which is a document which everyone agrees to, you're never going to get everyone onto the same page.
Right. So you think that service level agreement is fundamental in terms of removing conflict and giving the alignment?
Yeah, 100%. Like I think the way I've done it before, like we work out, we reverse engineer what needs to get done within the business in terms of metrics from all the different departments. And then what we'll do is we'll have it on a piece of paper and everyone has to sign that piece of paper. Right. So everyone really knows, right? Like it has to be a thing until sales and marketing understand they're in the same team. Yeah. You've got problems. Right. Because they're never going to work together. And that's people recognizing that it is a team sport. Right? Like revenue, growing a business is a team sport. Yeah. No one's more important than the other. We're all on one team. We've all got a job to do.
Yeah. So the way you're talking, it becomes almost like you're trying to evolve the organization so that revenue is the area, and you've got an operations area building the platform, building the product, if you like. So you've got that over here, and then you've got revenue as an area, and then you've got experts within it. So rather than looking at the organizational chart and saying we've got a sales area and we've got a marketing area, or we've got a customer support area, what you're basically saying is use an SLA, but get the consent to bring everybody together and say, you are revenue. And now you're an expert in marketing, you're an expert in sales, you're an expert in the customer support. We need you to pull together. But it's kind of a change of mindset, would you say that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a change of mindset for a lot of businesses, right? Because you do end up with the two camps, and you, like I said, you need to get everyone together on the same page. Otherwise, you're never going to win. And if you are going to win, you would have expelled so much additional calories trying to do it. It would have been painful, and you would have wasted a load of cash. But especially nowadays, people can't afford to do, right?
Yeah. So you talked about you can't just jump straight into it. If you've got, if we've got somebody listening here who's very early stage business, they've got some seed money, the product's ready to go to market, what should they be thinking about in terms of building this growth team? How do they get off the ground?
I think it depends. Okay, so if you're at seed, you might have maybe one or two salespeople, right? And they're reporting into the CEO. The CEO is running the sales function. You might have a marketing lead.
Yeah.
So I think at that stage, like, marketing should be involved in most things, right? They should be listening to phone calls. They should be on client meetings. They should be involved in as much as they can to get context, because you're still really trying to build your value prop, right?
Yeah.
You might, product market fit is sort of used as a term or a moment in your life when you go, oh, we've got it, right?
Yeah.
It can happen like that. You can start to see elements of it, but it's really quite hard to actually get a clear definition. If you ask like 10, 20 different people, what is product market fit? Everyone will give you a slightly different answer, right? Mark Roberts does a really good, I think it's called like the science of scaling, and he talks about Slack. They've got a metric based on adoption of the product, of when they get value. So it's not just about like how many people are logging in, it's they're actually doing things that linked to them getting their time to value down, right?
Right.
And so like, to really understand where you're at and what you need to do next, you need to know where you're at. So do you have product market fit? If you do, cool. Okay, what do we need to start to do? We then need to build our go-to-market fit motion, right? So it might be that very often at that seed stage, you've been doing a lot of outbound. But outbound, if you've got a low average contract value, unless you're doing really well, you're doing high volume, it's going to be really expensive.
Right.
So how do you then start to scale your different go-to-market motions? Are you thinking at this point, we've got a low average order value, and actually we can do a lot of stuff in product to get people to use, right? So you might go towards more of a product-led growth, which will require very different motions and team structure compared to an enterprise sales.
Right.
So like for enterprise sales, you're going to need maybe an account-based marketing function, right? Or team or individuals. Whereas with product-led growth, you're talking, performance marketing, growth marketing, very close alignment with product. Or then you've got SMB and mid-market, right? And SMB is obviously much more of a demand gen play for marketing. And then enterprise or mid-market is really depends on in between, right? Are we talking, is it more marketing focused or is it more sales focused? So I think like the first thing is always like focus on demand gen, right? And getting that right. So the first step towards getting alignment, I would say, is having that handover point. What are you actually handing over to sales? Is it marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, marketing qualified accounts, whatever the three-letter acronym you want to use? Be really clear about what that is and make that binary. Right? Because if it's not binary, it's the same with when you create pipeline. If you've got, I don't know, salespeople creating deals or opportunities, whatever term you want to use, without a really clear entry criteria, it doesn't mean anything, right? Because your close rate is going to vary by person depending on when they create opportunities. Are they some people creating it too early or too late? So that means your sales cycle is going to be completely out of loop, right? So going back to the point, right? Like, it's being really clear about what you're handing over to sales. and then being clear about getting that feedback loop from sales about why it didn't progress. Was it the wrong type of business? Was it not ICP? Was it the wrong persona, or they didn't have the budget? So you've got the insights that then allow you to iterate and build on that. But I would say like the first evolution is being really clear about what you're going to give to sales. Sales knowing what that is, and then knowing what they need to do with it.
And the agreement both ways. That's you basically describing this SLA. Sales know what they're getting, and it will be to a standard, and sales will behave to a standard in order to do that.
And then just to build on that, once you've got that, then you can start to work out, okay, so we're really clear about when we create marketing qualified leads or whatever we're handing over to sales, what's our conversion into pipeline? And then once you know what that is, then you can start to move up to that being the number that marketing's held accountable to, because really it should be the same thing as creating those leads. And then once you've nailed that and you've got the right ICP and you've got the right go-to-market motion, then it's focusing on the revenue.
Okay. So early on in that very interesting description, you talked about the importance of marketing people sitting in on sales meetings, sitting in on sales calls.
Definitely.
So what have you seen as, the benefits of doing that?
I think messaging, like sometimes marketing do a brilliant job pulling together a value proposition, and, in isolation, you can think everyone's saying what you've written in that slide deck, right? And you realize that 9 out of 10 sales guys are saying something completely different, right? And actually, neither's right or wrong, but it might be actually something one sales guy is saying that completely resonates with a persona that you never had or never knew, right? Like a lot of salespeople, or all salespeople, are speaking to clients every single day. And that's a really important feedback loop that's sometimes missing. So if marketing people don't want to sit in on the initial call, or they don't have the time, you've got like call intelligence tools where they record everything. It's all transcribed. There's no excuse not to. You know what I mean? So I think coming back to your question, like, it's just understanding what's going on in those calls. And there's often going to be gems, there's going to be things which are going to frustrate people, but it's getting that transparency into it, because it's where the traction happens in the whole process, right? Everything until that first point of contact is just, is messaging, right? So what happens in that first call, I think, is really powerful for marketing people to know.
And I think that also there's another thing of making sure that the salespeople understand that if you're recording and transcribing calls, it's for the benefit of marketing to learn from their expertise, not that you're spying on the salesperson to say, oh, you're not following the script, if you like.
Oh, massively. And I suppose I've used like the call recording software in most of my recent businesses, and it's without a doubt one of the most powerful things you could do as a sales leader. And also for the salesperson to sit down, as painful as it can be, is to listen to you and watch yourself back, and really taking the time to understand, when you were doing the discovery phase, were you really listening to what that person was saying, or were you just going through your standard questions, right? And so if salespeople buy into that motion, it doesn't matter other people. It should never be viewed. If a salesperson views call recording, call intelligence software, whatever you call it, as a big daddy exercise or whatever, then they've missed the point, right? Like, without a doubt, one of the most powerful things is introducing that software and doing call reviews with your sales team every week, and going through each one of those calls. So if you're doing that, marketing listening or reviewing one of the calls would never be viewed as a bad thing, because they view the intent as it's pure and as it's true, which is meant to be, which is helping them be better salespeople.
Right. And you're a senior sales leader. Do you still dip into these call recordings? You know, how much time? Weekly. Okay. And do you, so for somebody listening in, is there a methodology which would be good from both a sales lead and a marketing lead perspective? Should it be a random selection, or should it be systematic, like we'll look at everybody's recordings? And I'm not talking about the kind of making sure your rep's doing a good job. I'm talking about building this intelligence.
There's actually one of the call intelligence tools has an ability for you to actually push in some of the insights into like product planning tools, like this product called Product Board. Okay. And you can take snippets, right? So let's say a prospect says to you, that looks really good, Tim, but this and this doesn't help us because it doesn't do this and this.
Yeah.
That snippet could be then pushed over to Product Board, and you can still do that just generically, right? The whole point of this is to bring the voice of the customer out of just the call, which is sat in a sales silo, across the organization. So you need like sales to be proactive into sharing those sound bites and getting the voice of the customer into wider conversations. But yeah, in terms of getting marketing folks or leaders into it, just have an open dialogue with the sales team. But I think that comes back to the alignment piece, right? Like if you try to do this without everyone being aligned, it won't probably be seen with the intent that it's intended to, which is working together as a team.
Yeah. So in terms of building this revenue growth team going forward, what do you see as the points of failure or causes of failure that typically happen?
I think not having an ideal client profile is probably one of the biggest things I've seen businesses not get right.
Okay.
And
do you want to dig into what should be an ICP, an ideal client profile then?
Yeah, and I think it depends on your stage of maturity.
Okay.
Right. And I think like definitely one of the things I've always said like an ideal client profile. So an ideal client profile is people you should sell to. Yeah. And there needs to be a clear reason why you're trying to sell to them. And it should be painful, right? It should be painful in the way that when you get a lead, you have to make a decision whether you're going to work that lead or not.
Right.
Yeah, whether you're going to disqualify it. And the reason why it's really important to be clear about who you're selling to is because it can have different ramifications. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. When I joined a business, growth was good, but churn was really bad. And what happened was we stripped away by doing cohort analysis on who was churning by size. And what we found was any business below a certain size, we lost within 6 months.
Right.
And our customer acquisition cost is like 12 months.
Right.
So we're losing money every time we sold to one of those businesses. So what we did was we changed our qualification profile then based off revising the ICP and said, we're only going to sell to these people. Yep. Now, you obviously, it's funny, as soon as you say to someone, we can't help you, people actually want it more. So what we realized was there are always people which wanted to buy from us, but we needed to make it viable for us. So what we said is, cool, but you have to pay 12 months up front. So we recovered our customer acquisition costs, right?
Okay.
So the ideal client profile is really, really important because your product should be designed to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And if you've built a product without knowing who you're solving it for, you've probably got bigger problems.
Right. Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
So like being really clear about who your ideal client profile is super important because then that tells you what's your average order value. And then your average order value then allows you to dictate what's going to be your go-to-market strategy. So mentioned earlier, like outbound for low average order values, like outbound SDR, sales development reps. Yeah. And you got a low average order value, doesn't work. The economics very rarely stack up. Yeah. Conversely, if you've got an average order value of 200,000, you're probably not going to put in a lot of money into pay-per-click Google, right? No one's going to see an advert for a £200,000 product and then go, oh, we need that now.
Well, you're not going to expect them to convert off that.
No.
You might be using that as a methodology to start engaging with them.
Fair point.
Yeah, because we've won 500,000 plus deals for people from PPC and SEO.
Yeah.
But they didn't click on it and convert next month. It was part of a cycle.
Get it? But it's not the point of origin in terms of generating that lead, I would challenge, right? Like it would pay, for something like that, they've probably been coming to market for 6 to 12 months and that may be one of the last touch points. Yeah. But it wasn't the primary go-to-market sort of, do you see what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
So I think like not having your ideal client profile and not knowing who you're selling to and how much that should cost you in terms of your acquisition cost, which should be aligned to how much you're going to charge them. Yeah. And then finally, once you've got that set out and you know what your go-to-market is, then you go through what we discussed earlier, getting aligned across the team. Yeah. Marketing knows how much they've got to contribute and sales knows what they've got to do, and if marketing do this, sales are going to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm always surprised when people don't know what their ideal client profile is. And I work for a company where, pushed really hard to get this ideal client profile nailed, but they want it to be ubiquitous.
Right.
Which is like the antichrist to an ICP, right? You can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
So those things are really important. And I think just one of probably the biggest challenges is managing internal expectations, right? So if you're going to build out an outbound SDR function, it's a 6 to 12 month investment.
Yeah.
You're not going to get people into the business within 3 months and it's going to be delivering the results.
The revenue.
It's not gonna
especially
happen.
with these, these deals which have a long life cycle anyway, naturally, because they've got a complex decision-making unit. They've got to get sign off. It might be an annualized budgeting cycle. So, we really want it, but it's got to wait until next budgeting cycle, things like that. So I completely get you on that. Interesting in terms of what you were saying with the generation of this ICP and the desire to be ubiquitous.
Yeah.
We've seen that very much so from a marketing perspective. Who do you want to sell to? Who's your best fit?
Yeah.
Are you a believer in going narrow and then widening, or are you a wide and then narrow? Or does it depend on the situation?
Yeah, I think it does, right? I think sometimes, like if you're new to market and you're trying to find product market fit, you should obviously have a hypothesis and you should test that hypothesis, and then you should, if you're, whatever the outcome is, then you should try to test it again to really refine it. I think just saying we sell to businesses with 1 to 10 million, based in the UK, that's not an ideal client profile, right? So I think it's definitely dependent on the situation, often the maturity of the business, but you will very often have different ICPs. Like a lot of businesses will start off selling SMB and then they'll move up to mid-market or to enterprise over time, right? And with that, the ICP will change and evolve and adopt. But I think, to your question, I think it really depends on where they're at.
Yeah.
But I would always have a tight ICP and test it.
Yeah.
And then iterate on that rather than just being too broad.
Yeah. I think as an organisation, Innovation Visual, we're aligned in that thinking. Too often we go into situations where a potential client approaches us and they're working with an agency, and particularly where it's something like PPC, and they're getting, the agency's getting paid based on percentage of spend, and you see the spend and they're just throwing the net really wide. And the first thing we say is, hold on a minute, no, just target down, very narrow, go for that ICP, and get positive ROI. And it's interesting you tell the story about the churn, because you want to look at the full lifetime value of these people you're bringing in.
Yeah.
Target down and then grow that out and see if you're getting 10, 15x revenue from this section of the market, can you widen it slightly? Can you go a little bit higher? Can you go a little bit lower? Or can you go to a slightly different sector or something like that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, just from experience, we had a point solution product that solved one very specific problem.
Yeah.
And we slowly built out the features which allowed us to go into another vertical. And then those two verticals combined gave us access to the upper market.
Right.
And so it really does evolve. And to your point around like the churn and everything that comes with it, like just looking at, you might have 200 leads, but if only 25 of them convert, you've wasted a huge amount of energy within the organization. And you could be getting your sales team to outbound instead of sitting down on a demo with someone that's got no authority, no need, and no influence, right? That's a waste of time. So I think it's often dependent on the situation.
And I think I'm definitely with you on the mindset that marketing drives revenue. And yes, you get measured along the way by the different numbers and leads and things like that are on the way. But the see this where, again, coming into situations where we've been asked to consult and advise, and it's like, well, we're getting these leads, but they're not converting. And some of the greatest changes that we put in place for clients has been about when the salespeople come to marketing and go, the leads are so much better now.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's awesome.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because salespeople are expensive, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. And it makes such a big difference in terms of the relationship we're talking about earlier, because then marketing and sales are partners.
Yeah.
And that's like, once you've got that alignment, and it's something it is really tough to get to. Well, it's tough to get to depending on where the starting point is, right? Like if you're closer together. But it's huge. Once, sales know that those leads coming across the table are valuable and they're going to close, it just changes the game. I think the challenge is sometimes though, like in some markets where you're evangelizing, like where your product doesn't actually have a category at the moment.
Right.
That's tough, right?
Okay.
Because like you probably want the sales team to get earlier into, well, there's two things, like where you're evangelizing and where it's enterprise.
Yeah.
I think very often you probably want to go further down the funnel where they're probably less qualified, because I think it's hard, right? Like if you're trying to sell a product which there isn't
nobody knows it exists.
Yeah, you're trying to sell a product that solves a problem they don't know about, but it's not the problem they don't know about, it's about the impact of solving that problem as well they don't know about.
Right. Okay.
So the challenge there is then coming back to the alignment piece, right? These are warmer leads, but by educating the buyer, which we have to do, right?
Yeah.
We have to create the market. We have to make sure that we're selling to the early adopters, right?
Yeah.
You've got to sell to the right people. And also you've probably got to go earlier into that process of when you hand over those leads. And maybe it's the same with enterprise, right? Like with enterprise deals, you want to be engaging sooner, because if it's I don't know, typically you go through an RFP or something.
Yeah.
You want to get into that decision-making unit sooner rather than later.
To help define the RFP.
You want your fingerprint all over it before it comes to you, right? Because then you're going to win it, right? You don't win RFPs, you lose them, because if you've not been involved in building it, like right?
Yeah.
You've got no chance.
Yeah.
So I think it really does depend on like when you get the sales and the marketing involved in the motion. But there needs to be alignment regardless, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone needs to know why you're doing it like this, and then challenge it if it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So is there anything else in there which might cause the revenue growth team and plan to fail, do you think?
Yeah, it's often people, right? Like especially at the speed that startups move, it's really hard to make sure you've got the right people across the board is really important, right? So I think like the challenge is sometimes it's hard to find. So, okay, let me rephrase. When building that go-to-market motion, one of the first things you need is demand, right?
Yeah.
And demand marketers is probably one of the hardest jobs I think you can hire for in marketing or in revenue, right?
Yeah.
Like a really good demand generation marketer can set the world on fire.
Yeah.
And I think finding that person and getting that person into the organization and then making sure that they've got the right support around them to be successful is critical.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like making sure if you don't have it in-house, it's like finding the right people that could do that external, like, agencies and everything, like how we've worked together in the past, right?
Yeah.
I think if you don't have the right people, it's then augmenting that with people externally.
So it's the skill sets, and it's the alignment of attitude, and it's the right team working approach. Because it's interesting when it comes to hiring. I mean, we've done enough of it between us, I think, that you can have the person with the right skill set, but they might not have the right attitude.
Yeah.
That causes failure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can have the person with the right attitude, but if they're not up to the level of the skill set, it's, as you say, if it's a fast-paced environment, there's not time for them to develop those skills quickly enough.
Definitely, right? And I think the challenge is, especially with market teams nowadays, you end up with a lot of T-shaped marketers which are really good on one thing and can do a bunch of things okay, but really strong on one thing, right?
Yeah.
And that means that if you've got quite a small team, there's a bunch of things that your team could be okay at doing, but they need support to do it better.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and the problem is, by definition, the generalist is probably quite low across the board. And in fact, if you're allowed to bring, say, 3 marketing heads into the team, and you've got demand gen, you've got somebody who's got to be worrying about content, you've got somebody else who's got to think about marketing automation, you need somebody actually to think about the organic search, you've got somebody else who's got to think about your paid strategy and things like that. Or you've got a lot of different requirements of skill sets. And as you say, how does a very T-shaped marketer with, I can do this really well, you can't hire 10 people.
No, you can't. And you probably never will to until you get to like a Series B or something where you can really build out a sizable team. So yeah, I think whether you're leaning on an agency for the marketing side or for RevOps, for example, it's really important to find that partner earlier on, which can support you on that journey.
Yeah. And in terms of also what's your thinking when it comes to bringing fresh ideas and mindset of the agency? Because one of the things that we talk to our clients a lot about is actually doing things differently, giving them a fresh pair of eyes. Have you found that in the past?
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially within fast-moving environments, it's hard to get the time to reflect, and having someone that views the world with fresh eyes, like that beginner mindset type thing, right? I think it's really, really powerful. Having someone that can come in and just look externally, dispassionately at what you're doing is just huge. Like whenever I join a business or when I onboard someone, I say, look, definitely keep a note of all the things you think we're doing wrong. Learn what we're doing, but keep a note of what you think we're doing wrong. And let's come back to that, because that approach of like challenging things and thinking about fresh ideas is really powerful when you're onboarding people, but even more important when you've got an agency, because feels like I'm still in agencies here, but like one of the...
That's okay. We're an agency, I'm fine with that.
How much was the commission? Like the cool thing is, agencies work with X number of clients, right? So they're seeing all those different scenarios play out at different sort of maturity levels. So those insights can give you, hey, look, we were in a similar position with a company 2 years ago, same place, and they did this and it went wrong. We suggest why, right? Like it's having an advisor. Instead. It's powerful, really powerful stuff.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I know that a lot of your career, especially latterly, has been in the tech area. As an organisation, we work across the board, and we've got a lot of tech clients, but we've also got a lot of non-tech clients. We've talked a lot about revenue growth, and the model that you talk about. Do you see that being applicable to other areas, other sectors?
Yeah, I do. I think the thing that I'm always amazed by is like the discipline of SaaS sales or just revenue growth as a whole. Like I think whatever industry you're in, I'm not saying SaaS, has solved all the problems, but some of the insights of understanding who you're selling to, what messaging, and then looking at that in terms of when you win an opportunity, what personas were involved, all of that level of insight, I don't think a lot of industries do. And I think, the foundations of building a repeatable, predictable, and scalable business, which is like the end goal of any SaaS business which is starting to scale, should be transferable in elements or components to any business, right? Like why wouldn't you be really clear about, if you've built, I don't know, like a water pump, being really clear about what types of businesses really want that water pump, because you probably want to charge a bit more instead of trying to sell it to someone that doesn't, and not being able to charge the premium and that having an impact on your margin. So I think the principles, and SaaS didn't come up with segmentation and personas, right? Like that, that's not a thing. It's been around for a while, but I think the broad adoption of some of the principles that SaaS has, or technology more broadly, definitely.
And I'm strongly in agreement actually on that stuff with you. I think that we've seen in SaaS over recent years, and we've both been involved with SaaS businesses for quite a number of years, it draws the brightest minds in because there's often a lot of money flowing in that area. So if you think about it that way, SaaS in itself isn't the magic beans or whatever, but it's actually the people that are getting drawn into there because of the returns that they can earn.
Yep.
Some of the brightest minds are coming up with the brightest ideas. But I'm completely with you, and it would be interesting actually to do more workshopping between, like, you know, what the tech businesses do and what a maybe more traditional sales org and revenue org does.
Yeah, completely.
You've mentioned technology and its use within the RevOps arena. Can you kind of expand a little bit more on the specifics of what technology you think is key to revenue growth success?
Yeah. I think once again, like, depends on where you're at, right? Like, there's definitely a maturity path that you have to go through. And also the go-to-market motion, right? So I think, you know, the lower your average order value, the more automation you need, right? Because you want to get those efficiencies. So, you know, if you think about like an SMB business, you can't have your sales team manually enriching leads and doing a lot of research. You know, that stuff has to be at their fingertips, right? So that involves building out your tech stack to make sure you've got the insights that allows your team to execute on the data effectively. But then also, you know, when it comes to automation, you need to think about the customer experience, right? It's really easy to get caught up in, we're going to automate this, automate that, but at the cost of the customer experience. And there's always a balance whether, you know, you should be doing it just to get it done or you're doing it to add value. Like, I think a good example might be like lead nurturing. Right? Like, you can do obviously email workflows and build that out. But if it's generic and you're not actually talking to the person or to the pain, what's the point, right? Like, don't do it just to do it. Do it to make sure that you're adding value and you're delivering experience. So I think the challenge with automation is that it is easy to automate and you can end up with a beast of automation, especially when you've got, I don't know, like a business that's Series A, Series B might have a CRM, a sales engagement platform. It might have marketing automation. It might have lead enrichment. You might have several lead enrichment tools to get good coverage. You might have call intelligence. You might have them report. You might have 5 to 10 different things in your stack. And you need to find a way to make sure that when you've got all this automation going, whether it's just pushing data between systems, you know what's going on, right? Like, because very quickly, you can end up with so much happening that if something goes wrong, how do you find the root cause? Because there's so much firing off each other's different workflows. So, automation. And, you know, I've seen processes which are just beautifully architected and automated. But that takes time, and it's a specialist skill as well, right?
I mean, it's interesting what you were saying about the core thing at automation. You can create it, the tools are there, but if there's no value behind it, if there's not been thought, and I always believe that the value comes from personalization, make it specific, and then make it useful. Make it about the recipient, not about the company that's sending it. You know. And that does take time. And a lot of what we do for clients is building not just the nicely architected system around it and the flows, but actually building the content that sits underneath it. Because without that content, you don't have any value to your automation. So you're probably not a big believer in those awful LinkedIn messages that people send.
The lead gen ones.
The lead gen ones.
No, not. But who is, right? But I mean, there's ways you can use that to drive value, right? It's just the person that's doing it doesn't, you know, even though they say it's their job, they're not doing a very good job at it. So I think like automation is really important, but then it's like, you could do stuff with automation to drive insights that you wouldn't normally be able to get, right? So it might be, I don't know, appending data across different systems that adds a layer of insight which provides a different lens on the data, which can then completely revolutionize what you're doing as a business. And I think, you know, one of the challenges is when you go into a business is thinking about what you're going to do, right? So what I've seen some people do wrong is they go in with their playbook. This is my playbook. This is what I do.
Okay.
Right? And I think the challenge with that is that every business is the same, right? And I work with a lot.
And I've seen the same mistake from agencies.
Right.
The agency goes into the B2B
Yeah.
client and goes, well, here's our playbook to change your business.
Yeah.
But they haven't taken the time to listen to what the business is and
Right.
where the differences are.
And the thing is though, what I've come across is everyone thinks their business is special, and they are very, very special businesses,
Yeah.
right? But like the bulk of what the business is the same. Where the nuance and where the variance is, where things are different, is where it's really powerful, right? So like, I'll give you an example. Two businesses both sell similar products.
Yep.
Both sell a same average order value, but to different markets. And they have the same, like they have an SDR, they have a salesperson, But one of them has a high network effect. They have a high viral coefficient, right? So what you could do as a sales, marketing, whatever leader coming in is go, I did this really well, and I'm going to do what I did there here.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is if you don't know the nuance in that business and you don't capitalize on that network effect, you've missed on a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think like there should be principles which you always follow or should try to follow, but you can't apply the same playbook from one company to another. And that's a huge fallacy. And I think like that then comes back to, you know, like automation and reporting and everything. You can't always do the same thing between businesses, to your point. You have to take time to understand what they're trying to do, what type of business they are, and adapt to those challenges and changes.
And it's really interesting. You say the power is where the differences are, not where the similarities are. So actually focus on the differences. Don't just try and mash in the same.
And definitely, like one business I was working at, we got a lot of referrals, but referrals are really passive, right? So if you then take a step back and think, why do we get referrals? It's because we've got a lot of companies which have other people using our software. So, you know, you've got a user here, one company, but there's another person who works on other businesses as a consultant, let's say, who use this product. So they then refer us. Well, how do we then make that systematic? How do we then map out who those people are? And then how do we engage them with programmatic display advertising? How do we then engage them in content? How do we bring them into our sphere, right? And it's those small things which completely revolutionize the go-to-market strategy. So it's often the nuance, which is where the opportunity is.
Okay. Interesting. Really good. Really good. I suppose we should start to be, I mean, I know we could probably talk for hours on this, but we should probably try and wrap it up. I mean, if you had to give some headlines as to, you know, what are the key things, and I won't hold you to a number like 5 or 10 because you'd hate me for that, you know, but what are the key things? You know, somebody listening to this, they're in a situation, they need to really sort out their revenue growth. What are the key factors that you would say they should focus on to take themselves forward, just as a summary of what we talked about?
I think first of all, it's like going back to the ICP, right? Like understand your ICP, make sure everyone's aligned to that, and then being really clear about what your go-to-market is. You know, how are you going to sell? How are you going to win those clients? What are you going to do to win them? All that sort of stuff. Make sure that's documented, defined, and aligned across the organization. And then finally, just having the alignment and the collaboration, right? Like I think SLA, but also the relationship, right? Like if a sales leader and a marketing leader aren't meeting on a weekly basis for half an hour, just to connect and sync up on what's happening, huge opportunities missed. And you should, like, whether you're a marketing leader, sales leader, CS leader, you should be speaking with your team. And a lot of people, I think, like earlier on in their career, they sometimes forget that they might have their marketing team, but their real team is their peers in the other functions. And it's making sure you've got that relationship and those alignments nailed. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere because it's a team sport.
Okay. Really interesting. Really interesting. I mean, I'm thinking we should get you back and we should dig into some of these things a bit more at some other time. I know your time's precious and you've got a challenge ahead of you at the moment with the growth that you're driving in the business. But I think, I'd just like to thank you for spending the time to talk to us today. I think it's really good, and hopefully everybody that's been watching on the Digital Marketing Answered channel on YouTube and also listening on the podcast on all the various platforms have enjoyed this. Obviously, please do like and subscribe, and also please also comment as well. Give us some suggestions of what else you would like to see, as well as commenting on the very interesting things that Alex has provided us with today. So thank you, Alex. It's been really good, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah. Cheers, Tim. Take care.